Good morning, OLLI members. Welcome. My name is Nancy Murr, and I handle communications at OLLI. And I am delighted to showcase this wonderful talk we have with Kip Cranna. Clifford Kip Cranna is Dramaturg Emeritus at the San Francisco Opera, where he served on the staff for 40 years. In 2008, he was awarded the San Francisco Opera Medal, the company's highest honor. Kip holds a PhD in musicology from Stanford and has taught many popular courses here at OLLI for, we think, the past 4, maybe 5 years. And he has just a delightful preview to share with you today. So I'm going to just sort of bow out and turn over the reins to Kip. So Kip, please take it away.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you all for joining us. Thank you for being members of OLLI Berkeley, and this is, I think, a perk for you, this little talk as a reward for being loyal members of OLLI. And I'm delighted to be here to hopefully whet your appetite for the fall season at San Francisco Opera. Oh my God, can the summer be over already? Is the opera season upon us? Well, unfortunately, almost yes. Not too long before we'll be going back into the opera house. By the way, Dramaturg, people always ask, that's just a fancy title for scholar in residence. And most of my work at San Francisco Opera was in sort of hardcore administration behind the musical apparatus of the company. But my background is in musicology, and so now my role is in sort of a educational capacity as it is with OLLI. Let me get into screen sharing right away because we've got so much to talk about. This is the centennial season at San Francisco Opera, and so we're celebrating 100 years of the company's history. And I'll get into let's see if I can get into a slideshow to get this thing going. There we are. Yes, I have this title slide, 100 years at San Francisco Opera, starting back in 1922, and I'll tell you all about that. This is the logo that they're putting forward for the 100th year celebration of the future of opera. So we're looking forward to the next 100 years. Let me see if I can get that little window to go away there. Yes, okay. And so we'll be back at the Opera House in early September for a very exciting 22-23 season, which I'm just going to briefly recap for you. And if I can get the slide going, there. Here's a little trailer to sort of get you in the mood for this coming season.
100 years ago, San Francisco Opera was born from a community of immigrants and coffee merchants, shipyard workers, and students, united in one goal: to give the Bay Area her own opera company. They would shape our lives with deep, emotional storytelling. They would transport us and touch our very souls. They would connect us with what it means to be human. 100 years later, we are still pioneering, creating, risk-taking, telling stories old and new, imagining opera.
Whoops, I didn't mean to click that. Hang on, let's...
For today's goal, to give the Bay Area her own opera company. They would shape our lives with deep, emotional storytelling. They would transport us and touch our very souls. They would connect us with what it means to be human. 100 years later, we are still pioneering, creating, risk-taking, telling stories old and new, imagining opera for today's humanity and tomorrow's.
So we're going to recap what's going on in this upcoming season. And if you have any questions for me, put them into the chat. I'll look at them. I'll save some time at the end of this hour to look at them. If you were commenting on a specific piece, be sure to mention which one it is so that when we get to the chat, I'll know what you were talking about. All right, so this is the lineup. Anthony and Cleopatra, Eugene Onegin, Dialogues of the Carmelites, La Traviata, Orpheus and Eurydice, Madame Butterfly, Die Frau ohne Schatten, The Woman Without a Shadow, and El Ultimo Sueño de Frida y Diego, The Last Dream of Frida and Diego. Quite an interesting lineup, something old, something new, and some things that have historical relevance to the 100 years of San Francisco opera. So lining these up here, Anthony and Cleopatra by John Adams is a world premiere, sung in English. Eugene Onegin by Tchaikovsky from 1879, sung in Russian. Dialogues of the Carmelites, Les Dialogues des Carmelites by Francis Poulenc, that's how you pronounce that, sung in French. La Traviata, which means The Woman Who Went Astray by Verdi from 1853, Italian, new production. Orpheus and Eurydice, which is sung in Italian. There's a French version of it as well, but we're doing the Italian version, by Gluck from 1762. Madame Butterfly, that perennial favorite of Puccini from 1904, a new production in Italian. Die Frau ohne Schatten by Strauss from 1919 in German, and El Ultimo Sueño by Gabriela Elena Frank in Spanish. I misspelled that. That's Lena in the middle there. Sorry, I didn't notice that typo. In Spanish, this will be the first time we've ever done an opera in Spanish on the main stage, so something historical there. So let's talk briefly about the 100-year history that we're celebrating. The opera's founder was Gaetano Merla, who was an Italian and a Neapolitan conductor who had come to San Francisco first in 1906 and a few times after that with touring companies as a conductor. He ultimately decided to settle here, I believe in 1919, and in 1922, he went to the brand new Stanford Stadium. It was new that year, it was a big deal. And he was impressed with the acoustics. He heard the band playing and he thought the sound was just wonderful. And he thought, what if we do opera there? And he rounded up some money from his friends in the Italian community in North Beach. And he put on a season at Stanford in the summer of 1922 with Pagliacci, Carmen, and Faust. And there's the poster from this season. He lost a ton of money, but it was very successful artistically, and he decided to found a resident company the following year. Here's a plaque that's now in the War Memorial Opera House lobby that honors the Italian Americans who supported Merla in that 1922 season. Here's a close-up of it. You see the names of the Italians who were on board there, and talks about the three operas that were performed. So that was the sort of the seed money, if you will, the inspiration to get the company going 100 years ago. The following year, they started performing in what we now call the Bill Graham Civic Auditorium, and a company that was now called San Francisco Opera. Here's a shot of the auditorium in the 1920s. It's vast. If you've been in there, you know it's huge. They somehow made it work for opera. There's a shot from Turandot of Puccini from 1927. And then, of course, in 1932, we opened the War Memorial Opera House, which is named as a memorial to veterans of World War I. Not necessarily just those who died, but anyone who served in World War I. The War Memorial honors them. The building next door is specifically for veterans, and then the Opera House is part of that memorial as well. Here's the ticket for the opening night back in 1932, $10. Pretty expensive back then, I suppose. And there's a shot of opening night at the Opera House, 1932. They're doing Tosca. The Opera House looks pretty much the same due to a restoration in 1996-97. There was an earthquake retrofit, and at the same time, they removed a lot of the lighting fixtures that had been hung alongside the walls, so that now the interior looks very, very much like it did back in 1932. Now, Merla died in 1953. Here's a shot of him just moments before his death, greeting soprano Brunetta Mazzolini at a concert at Stern Grove. I misspelled Grove there too. Where's my proofreader? San Francisco Opera. He died conducting an aria from Madame Butterfly. He was succeeded by General Director Kurt Herbert Adler, who was from Austria. He had come here as the chorus director and had become sort of the right-hand man to Merla. And he really put the company on the map, ran it until 1981. He was succeeded by the Canadian record executive Terry McEwen, who ran it during the 1980s. There he is with Pavarotti on the left, whose career he helped foster through recordings. He retired and went off to Hawaii, so which is why he's wearing leleis there. He was succeeded by an Iranian American, Lotfi Mansouri, who ran the company until 2001. He'd had a long history here as a stage director. And then came Pamela Rosenberg, the first American to run the company, who had gone to UC Berkeley but spent most of her career in Germany, and she lives now in Berlin as well. And then Pamela was succeeded by David Gockley, an American who had been running Houston Grand Opera for 40 years before coming here, with a long track record commissioning new operas, which he continued to do here. And now our current general director is the English gentleman, Matthew Schilbach, who is in charge, of course, of the season that we're about to discuss. There he is with our current music director, who's named in the last year or so, Unsun Kim, who is from South Korea, very popular with the orchestra and the chorus. And let's talk about this centennial season that we're going to be seeing. We start with Opera Ball, of course, with the centennial celebration on September 9th. That's the tradition is to open on the Friday after Labor Day. And these are the artists that will be singing in the concert with the orchestra that night. Nadine Sierra, Michael Fabiano, Lucas Meacham, and Penne Pate, all who have long histories with San Francisco Opera. 3 of them have been Adler Fellows, that is resident artists with our Young Artists program. And of course, Unsun Kim conducts. And then on Sunday that weekend, as tradition, we have the free Opera in the Park at what we now call Robin Williams Meadow at 1:30. So that's a great place to go. Bring the kids, bring your friends. It's free, and you can bring a picnic. Weekend, Anthony and Cleopatra by John Adams. A Roman general and an Egyptian queen embark on a torrid romance, one that will disrupt alliances, end marriages, and spark a pitiless war that gives rise to a new leader, Caesar Augustus. John Adams, of course, bases his story on the Shakespeare play, Anthony and Cleopatra, which we think was premiered somewhere around 1606 or 1607. There he is rehearsing with Unsun Kim. They did a little preliminary orchestral rehearsal last spring. Now, to get you familiar with the music of John Adams, I don't have anything to play for you from Anthony and Cleopatra, of course, because it hasn't been performed yet. But here's a little bit of other samples of his music. He is a Bay Area composer, of course, a Tony Pulitzer Prize winning composer, lives in Berkeley. And we have done all of his major operas here at San Francisco Opera, including Nixon in China. Here is a little bit of Nixon's aria, News, News, News. You'll see the pulsing, driving rhythm that is so typical of John Adams.
Has a kind of mystery. Has a kind of mystery. When I shook hands, so and I, when I shook hands, so and I, on this bare field outside the king, just now the whole world was listening. The whole world was listening.
All right. Here's another sample. This is from his opera Dr. Atomic, which was a world premiere here at San Francisco in 2005 about Robert Oppenheimer, the creator of the atomic bomb. Batter My Heart is a text from the poet John Donne from the Elizabethan period, where he's contemplating the enormity of the work he's doing.
Batter my heart, 3% for you as yet, but knock, breathe, knock, breathe, shine and seek to mend.
That is Gerald Finley, who will be creating the role of Anthony in the Anthony and Cleopatra opera. Here's another bit from Dr. Atomic with poetry by Muriel Rukeyser here. This is Kitty Oppenheimer trying to get the attention of Robert as he's intent on his work. rather not Batter My Heart. Am I in Your Light is the name of this poem, and Sasha Cook is the artist.
Am I in your light? Am I in your light? Am I in your light? No, go on reading the hackneyed light of evening, quarreling with the bows. The book's bent rectangle, solid on your knees.
Okay, a little sample there to get you in the mood for John Adams. Now, here are the artists that will be performing. Amina Idris will be our Cleopatra, originally from New Zealand. Gerald Finley, who's Canadian, will be our Anthony. Paul Appleby, an American, will be Octavius, who later became known as Caesar Augustus. And Alfred Walker is Enobarbus, Anthony's lieutenant, an important role in the opera, and he has a major aria. All right, going on to Tchaikovsky's Eugene Onegin, one of my favorite operas, I have to say, probably in my top 10 list. It is based on the verse novel by Alexander Pushkin. This is a production from a Canadian opera that originally came from the Met. Pushkin and Tchaikovsky were not contemporaries, as you can see from their dates there. Pushkin had died a few years before Tchaikovsky was born, but Pushkin is sort of the national poet of Russia, beloved by many, and Tchaikovsky's artful setting of the story is, I think, truly a masterpiece. Here's a quick little synopsis of the story. A selfish aristocratic hero, that's Onegin, lives to regret his blasé rejection of the young girl, naive young girl Tatiana, and his careless incitement of a senseless duel in which he unwittingly kills his best friend, Lansky. Ironically, Pushkin himself would be killed in a duel, so the novel was sort of foreshadowing. This is the guy who killed him, a guy named with the incredible name of Georges-Charles de Heckern-Dantes. He fatally wounded Pushkin in a duel, just as in the novel, Onegin fatally wounds his best friend, Lansky, over a silly quarrel. Here are some shots from the production. There is Tatiana in her famous letter scene. Another shot of the letter scene. She writes in a long letter to Onegin, and he embarrasses her with his response. These are the farm workers having a little celebration there. There is Onegin with his put down to poor Tatiana. He's around 22, 23 maybe, and she's about 16 in this story. There he is with his friend Lansky, who's a sort of an idealistic poet, sort of a Byronic figure. There's a ballroom scene in the opera. Here is the scene where Onegin and Lansky get into a bit of a fight because Lansky's been flirting with, Onegin has been flirting with Lansky's fiancée, Olga, just sort of in a spitefully playful mood, and that sets everything wrong. Here is Onegin with the man who eventually marries Tatiana, who is Prince Grayman. And there is Onegin having realized his mistake of rejecting Tatiana when she was younger, trying to get her back. And of course, it's too late. She's a respectable married woman now. Here is a little bit of the end of the letter scene. This is about a 15-minute aria where she stays up all night. She's been infatuated after having met Onegin, and she writes him this long letter, more or less putting her whole heart and soul into it and entrusting Onegin with her future. Here's the Renee Fleming singing the very ending of the letter scene from Eugene Onegin. Hello, Renee. Something to look forward to in this. Here is Onegин's aria. After he receives the letter from Tatiana, he comes to her and rather stiffly tries to let her down easy. He does it very badly and embarrasses her, mortifies her with his speech, his sermon to her. Here's a little bit of Onegин's aria. And here is a little bit of Lansky's aria. This is just before the duel, and he's in a very melancholy mood, not knowing that he's about to be killed. It's a wonderfully tuneful, typically Russian melancholy kind of sound. Here we go with Pawel Breslick as Lansky. That's Onegin. Here are the artists, two of them from Russia, Evgenia Muraveva as our Tatiana, Gordon Bittner is our Onegin, Evan Leroy Johnson's Lansky, and Augul Akhmenshina is the Olga. Going on to Francis Poulenc's Dialogues of the Carmelites, which is a piece that had its American premiere here at San Francisco Opera. It's a co-production with the Théâtre Champs-Élysées in Paris and the Théâtre Royal de la Monnaie in Brussels. And here is a quick little synopsis of this piece. The fearful young noblewoman Blanche enters the Carmelite convent of Compiègne, I guess it would be, hoping to escape the French Revolution's menace to the aristocracy. But the nuns are condemned, and they go to the guillotine singing a hymn of praise to the Virgin. Blanche had fled, but as the last sister is about to be executed, she appears repentant and mounts the scaffold to join her companions in martyrdom. This is based on a true episode from the French Revolution. So you see the stained glass window there honoring the martyrs of Compiègne. Here is Leontine Price as Madame Ledoine in the American premiere of Dialogues of the Carmelites here in San Francisco in 1957. It was her first major role. Here are some shots from the production we will be doing, a very evocative production. And another shot showing the sisters at prayer. This is Sister Constance, who's a rather chatty sister, becomes a good buddy of Sister Blanche. Another shot of the production, mealtime. This is Sister Constance being scolded there. Here's another shot. Very stark but striking looking production. Another shot of it. There is the old prioress on her deathbed. Tremendously dramatic scene in the opera. This is Blanche's father, who does not want her to go into a convent. Preaching to the nuns there. You see the priest up here in the window. Here is a scene from the opera. This is a different production, the one from the Met that's quite famous. Here are the sisters singing Ave Maria. Here is a scene with Blanche and her brother, who is trying to persuade her to leave the convent. He says it's not safe for you here. Number one, you're a nun, and the nuns, of course, were targeted by the revolution, and also you're from the nobility, so you've got 2 strikes against you, and he's trying to get her to go, but she refuses. The opera is called Dialogues of the Carmelites because, of course, it consists mainly of dialogues like this. Here's the final scene. The nuns are going off to execution, singing a hymn to the Virgin as they go, and we hear the sound of the guillotine off stage. That's Dialogues. Here are the artists: Heidi Stover, Michelle Bradley, Michaela Schuster, Middley Moore, and Gianna Brewick. All right, going on to Giuseppe Verdi's La Traviata. Probably doesn't need much introduction to most opera fans, but it will be a new production, which is very exciting. It premiered back in 1853 in Venice, and it is based very loosely on a true story, written by Alexander Dumas the Younger, whose father wrote The Count of Monte Cristo and the Three Musketeers and so forth. But he wrote, the younger man wrote The Lady of the Camellias, which was loosely based on his love affair with a woman named Marie Duplessis. Here's a poster for the play in English, The Lady of the Camellias. In English, it was usually called Camille. Sarah Bernhardt famously played it. There she is as Camille in the play. Eleonora Duse was also famous Camille, as was Greta Garbo. This is probably the most famous film with Robert Taylor. There she is, the real-life Marie Duplessis. She died at age 23 of tuberculosis. She had many lovers, including Franz Liszt, who said she was the most absolute incarnation of woman who has ever existed. There's her tomb at Montmartre in Paris. If you ever go there, you can visit the tomb of the original Violetta in La Traviata. Quick synopsis: the beautiful but sickly courtesan Violetta gives up her life of luxury and pleasure to live with her beloved Alfredo in the countryside, but his father persuades her to leave Alfredo because the scandal of his affair with her is ruining his young sister's chance for a respectable marriage. Thinking Violetta has deserted him for the Baron, Alfredo challenges him to a duel, but only wounds him slightly. Finally learning the truth of Violetta's sacrifice, Alfredo returns to her, begging forgiveness, but her fatal illness is upon her and she dies in his arms. Here is the famous drinking song from La Traviata. This is from our production back in 2014. And one other famous bit from this opera is Sempre Libera. Here is Renee Fleming again. Traviata ranks among the most favorites of Verdi's operas, along with Rigoletto and probably Trovatore. All right, here is the director, Shauna Lucy. She's now the general director at San Jose Opera. She brought us a very nice production of Tosca a couple of years ago, and she's back to give us Traviata. The artists are Pretty Yende from South Africa as Violetta, Jonathan Tittelman, American, as Alfredo, and the Italian bass baritone Simone Piazzolla as Germain, the father. Here's a set design, Robert Ennis Hopkins, who also did the Tosca. Very beautiful production. Act 1, Act 2, where Violetta and Alfredo have gone off to the countryside. Here's the gambling scene in Act 3, and then the final scene where Violetta expires. All right, going on to Gluck's Orpheus and Eurydice, or Eurydice, however you want to say it. This is by a composer who was the best known of the late 18th century French composers, but he was not French himself. He was, I guess, what we would call Bohemian. He was a contemporary of Mozart, but a generation older, born in Bavaria, but raised in Bohemia. So I think his basic language would have been Czech. He worked at the Habsburg court in Vienna, was music director of the French theater in Vienna, and he advocated what is called reform opera, a simpler, less virtuoso display and excess in the operas. And Orpheus and Eurydice displays that as well. He was music teacher to the Habsburg Princess Marie Antoinette, who of course went off to marry the heir to the throne of France, and that's how we got to France. This opera began in Italian in Vienna as Orfeo ed Eurydice, and then he redid it as a French opera. You notice the dedication to the Queen there in the French version. But we're doing the original Italian version, which was for a castrato. Here is the quick synopsis. Orpheus grieves at Eurydice's tomb. He resolves to rescue his love from Hades and is allowed to do so, provided he does not look at her until they have reached the Earth's surface. Orpheus, of course, was a legendary musician, so he goes to the underworld and charms them with his music. On the path leading out of Hades, Eurydice reproaches Orpheus for what she takes to be his coldness. Unable to bear her laments, Orpheus turns to look at her, and Eurydice dies again. Orpheus is prevented from killing himself by Love, who, bringing Eurydice back to life, reunites the lovers, and the opera ends with a chorus in praise of love. The original castrato who sang Orpheus was Gaetano Guadagni. We don't have castrati anymore, but countertenors usually take these parts now. These are artists who have learned to cultivate a very well-trained falsetto. Here is Bejun Mehta singing the famous aria, What Will I Do Without Eurydice, Che farò senza Eurydice. Here is, there's a lot of dancing, of course, in this opera. It's an opera with quite a lot of dance scenes that are important. Here is the dance of the Furies that greets Orpheus as he reaches the underworld. These videos are from the Lyric Opera Chicago production, not the one that we will be doing. Here is the Dance of the Blessed Spirits. This is a very familiar music, probably, if you listen to classical radio. Very similar in style to Mozart. The artists are Jakub Orlinsky, the Polish countertenor, as Orpheus, who's quite well known now. Christina Gansch from Austria as Eurydice, or Eurydice, as I guess we would say in English. And Nicole Heaston is Love or Amor. Here's a little bit of Orlinsky, who's become quite a phenomenon. Here he is, very informally dressed, at a summer festival, singing an aria of Vivaldi's Vedrò con mio diletto. You'll see why his vocalism is so highly prized. So we've been long awaiting the debut here of Jakub Orlinsky, and it'll come in Orpheus and Eurydice. Here are some couple of shots from the scenic designs for this production. There's another one. Should be quite a hit this fall. All right, going on to Madame Butterfly, again an opera that probably doesn't need a lot of introduction for you. Each night, the young geisha Chochason, Butterfly, looks over the port of Nagasaki, eagerly awaiting the return of her husband, U.S. Naval Officer Lieutenant B.F. Pinkerton. Alongside her is their young son, Trouble, who has never met his father, but Pinkerton returns with his new American bride, and tragedy awaits the unfortunate Butterfly. This is based on a play by David Belasco, who was from the Bay Area. And Puccini saw this play in London in 1900. There's the woman who played the role of Chochason in that play. He didn't speak English very well, Puccini, but he was very struck by the vigil where Butterfly waits all night for the return of Pinkerton, and when he doesn't come. Of course, there's the suicide at the end, the Japanese woman there preparing to commit suicide. They bound their feet so that they had a dignified posture in death. Pierre Loti was a French naval officer who wrote a story called Madame Chrysanthème about a woman that he had a relationship with in Japan, which may be part of the inspiration for this story. And a year later, we got the play or short story Madame Butterfly, which became a play by John Luther Long, an American lawyer, who says the story was told to him by his sister. Anyway, so there are some antecedents to the opera based on incidents in Japan. This is a new production with Tokyo, Dresden, and Copenhagen. It'll be very colorful. Here are some shots from the production. There's the wedding of Chochason and Pinkerton. The scene where she is denounced by her relatives for forsaking her gods. There's a little bit of the love duet. More of the love duet. There's Chochason. There she is with her little son. And in this production, the older son, the grown-up Trouble, Big Trouble as we would call him, is sort of looking back and witnessing these events from his boyhood. Here are highlights from our last time one of the last times we did Butterfly, just to get you in the mood for the music. So the artists in Butterfly are Chochason, Michael Fabiano, Hyuna Kim, Unsung Kim, of course, our conductor, and Aman Miyamoto as the director. A new production of Butterfly. Going on to The Woman Without a Shadow, Die Frau ohne Schatten, which had its American premiere here back in 1959. It's an LA opera production. David Hockney is the designer, the noted British artist who's 85 now. Quick synopsis. Half-spirited and half-mortal, the Empress lives in fear of a curse. If she doesn't acquire a human shadow, symbolizing the ability to bear children, in 3 days' time, the spirit world will reclaim her and turn her husband to stone. The wife of Barak the Dyer wants no children and is willing to sell her shadow to the Empress, whose scheming nurse encourages the bargain. But at the final moment, the Empress refuses to deprive another woman of her shadow. Her steadfastness is rewarded. The Emperor is restored to life, and their unborn children hail them. After much tribulation, Barak and his wife, too, are reunited. Very striking images from this production. There is the nurse with the Empress. It has a wonderful fairy tale look to it, as the story should. A handsome young man is conjured up to try to tempt the Dyer's wife. Scene of the Dyer's wife and family. Spirit world there. You can barely see them through the scrim. More shots of the production. Here is a little bit of an aria from the opera, Gibt du mir Kinder. This is Robert Hale as Barak the Dyer. The music, of course, will sound familiar if you know Der Rosenkavalier of Strauss, or if you know his earlier operas, Elektra and Salome. It is sort of an incredible gathering of orchestral forces, huge orchestra, and lots of incredible music. Here is a scene where the servant girls, summoned by the Empress, are trying to persuade Dyer's wife to give up her shadow, flattering her and telling her how beautiful she looks. let's talk about the artists. Camilla Nyland from Finland is the Empress. David Philip from the UK is the Emperor. Nina Stemma from Sweden is Barack's wife. Johan Reuter from Denmark is Barack, very international cast here. Linda Watson, who's from the Bay Area, is the nurse. And Sir Donald Runnicles from Scotland, our conductor, comes back. He was our music director for about 17 years. It'll be nice to have him back. He's, of course, noted in the German repertoire of Wagner and Strauss, and he is currently music director at the Deutsche Oper in Berlin. All right, then we get to Gabriela Lina Frank, composer, who is also a Bay Area resident, and Dino Cruz, the librettist, and El Ultimo Sueño de Frida y Diego, the last dream of Frida and Diego. This will be the, as I mentioned, first opera we have done on the main stage, composed by a woman, and also the first opera sung in Spanish. There, of course, are the subjects, Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo. I hope if you haven't already been there, get to SF MoMA. They have this incredible exhibit now of works by Diego Rivera. So it's a great chance to get yourself prepared artistically to experience this opera, which will come next spring. This is a co-commission with San Diego Opera, Fort Worth, and the University of DePaul School of Music. There's another shot of Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo. They were married here in San Francisco, got divorced, and then got remarried. They had quite a tumultuous relationship, as you probably know. Here is a self-portrait of Frida Kahlo. Her artistry is just so incredibly intriguing. And there's, of course, the image of Diego on her forehead. Here is another self-portrait, the two Fridas from 1939, with that very evocative image of the bleeding heart there. Here is the Wounded Deer, another incredibly enigmatic painting by Frida Kahlo. Diego Rivera, of course, is known for his vast murals, and we have 3 of them here in San Francisco. This is the huge one that is currently at SF MoMA. There's a documentary about how they moved it. It was at City College, but the building was being renovated, and so it had to be moved. This is Pan American Unity. So get to SF MoMA and see this incredible mural there. It's huge. It takes up the entire sort of exhibit space in the lower area. And of course, there are many, many more paintings of Rivera's there. Here is another mural. This is at the City Club of San Francisco down in the Financial District, Allegory of California. And here is another huge mural, which is at the San Francisco Art Institute. Who knows what's going to happen to it now that the Art Institute is closing? This is the making of a fresco showing the building of a city, and we see Diego Rivera, that's himself, sitting there with the palette there in his hand, watching what's going on. All right, so the story of El Ultimo Sueño de Frida y Diego. Set in 1857, the opera opens in a cemetery as Mexico celebrates the annual festival of El Día de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. The great muralist Diego Rivera walks among the worshippers as they prepare for the return of the spirits to the world. He longs to see his deceased lover Frida Kahlo once again before he passes on. In the afterlife, Frida hears that Diego desperately needs his beloved angel as the seed of death quickly sprouts within him. Frida reluctantly agrees to join him in the world above with the knowledge that the dead can never touch the living. For only 24 hours, Frida and Diego will relive the tumultuous love through their paintings, embracing the passion they shared and the pain they inflicted upon one another. There's a painting by Frida of the 2 of them there. So our artists are Gabriela Mack from Argentina as Frida. She was an Adler Fellow here. And Alfredo Daza, who's also an Adler Fellow, who is from Mexico. And the conductor, Roberto Kalb, who's Mexican, as is the director, Lorena Massa. Here's a quick little trailer from San Diego Opera about this piece.
I think it's important to look at the wealth that comes from Latin America and our input to the world of art, and especially because in this country, we're sometimes seen as immigrants that come here, and we're seen as only servers in restaurants, just the working class, and we forget that we have great masters who really serve the world of literature, the world of art, and that needs to be recognized in this country.
The wonderful things that Nilo has been able to achieve in the opera is to shine a different light or a unique light on Frida's relationship to Diego, Frida's relationship to her art, how the two come together and how the two are also separate. And Nilo very carefully, but very naturally lays in all the hints in Act 1 about how Frida feels.
On stage in an opera about Diego and Frida, it's really a challenge and it's a great idea. Nilo Cruz really brought together Diego and Frida in the threshold of the underworld, this in between life and death situation. Dia de Muertos is much more than the folklore we all know, because what it's really representing is how the dead souls travel to the underworld.
All right, here's a scenic design for Frida Diego. There is the Opera House, where it will be performed. And that's the season, the future of opera, artistry, innovation, and community. So that's our preview of the season. I'll get out of screen share now. And thanks to OLLI Berkeley for letting me give you this quick little survey of the season.
Wow.
Any questions for me? Now would be the time to give them to us.
Well, we just see high praise from Linda in the chat, but if people have questions too, you can pose them in the chat as well. And another vote of thanks to you, Kip. Here is a question. Here's a question in the chat from Jesse. Why has San Francisco Opera chosen to do a gala on opening night and not an opera?
Well, I'm not I'm in charge of repertoire planning, but I would guess that the fact is that the first opera of the season is a contemporary piece, John Adams' Anthony Cleopatra commission. Opening night is not the time to put on a piece like that, because opening night is a social event, and the music sometimes gets pushed aside in terms of the importance in the audience's mind. So better to have a celebration with a concert, which is more probably in keeping with the festive mood of opening night, rather than an opera in which the main two characters die. That would be my guess. Any other questions? You're muted now, Nancy.
And I am muted. I know. There I am trying to keep my barking dog from disturbing things. Carmelites, is that in French or in English?
Yes, in French. Yeah. When we did it, we did the American premiere. It was in English, but we are doing it in French this time. That was long before the era of subtitles back in the 50s. There's a question. Money is no object. What seating would you prefer in the opera house?
Oh, good question.
Yeah, if I had, if I won the lottery, I'd probably get a subscription to the box seats. But actually, the grand tier is, in my view, if you don't want to really splurge for a box seat, the grand tier is, in my view, a best combination of sight and sound. In terms of getting a really good view of the stage, plus the sound coming up to your ears.
Great.
And there will be a live stream, as was pointed out there, on September 18th.
2 p.m. Well, Kip, I think we have reached the end of our hour. Thank you for this journey through a really really wonderful season of new and old and exciting experimentation. It just sounds dynamite. So thank you, members, for joining us. This is yet another member benefit, as Kip pointed out. We're delighted to be able to offer these member-only events to you. We will caption this presentation and share it with all the registrants and post on our YouTube channel as soon as it's ready. So without further ado, Kip, thank you again so much. What a delightful
Pleasure.
hour.
See you at the Opera House.
Bye-bye.